Bible in a Minute, Chronological Gospels edition. We are looking at the genealogy of Jesus, and there are three names. There are so many names, and we'll actually look at a lot of them through this series. So we're going to take it slow because the point is to get as much information as we possibly can. Often in the Bible, God refers to himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And we're like, oh, yes, the patriarchs. Yes, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, men full of faith. And they were men that God used their righteousness and credited their righteousness as faith in him. And he did. But they're not without scandal, which is actually a great, great piece of information. It's great news. It's great news that they were scandalous, because that means that God didn't shun them because they made a mistake. He didn't cast them away because they failed. They had messed up, right? And so let's look at Abraham. In Genesis 12 and in Genesis 20, Abraham does something that isn't a lie, but it's not entirely true. It's half true. Because on two occasions, in Genesis 12 and Genesis 20, Abraham says that Sarah is my sister. Okay. Yes, that is half true, because Sarah was his half-sister, different mothers, but the same father. But they're married. They are husband and wife. And so Abraham is going into Egypt, and then in another place he's going into the area where Abimelech is. Abimelech is an interesting word. Avimelech means my father is king. And so he is going into two different places, two different times, right? Genesis 12 and 20. And he is telling those rulers, hey, tell them that she's my wife. What's interesting is the very first recorded word from Abraham to Sarah is this very thing in Genesis 12. You're a very beautiful woman. Yes, you're old, but you've aged well. And when we get there, people are going to see you and want to be with you, and they might kill me because there could be pagans, wicked people, whatever. And so he said, so say that you're my sister, which is half true. She does it on both occasions because he asks her to. So he eventually comes clean in both occasions. But it's so interesting that Pharaoh kicks him out. So when Pharaoh kicks him out of Egypt and sends him with camels and donkeys and slaves, this is most likely where Abraham and Sarah got Hagar, because Hagar was an Egyptian slave. And so where else would he have gotten her from other than when he left Egypt? So Hagar is most likely with Abraham and Sarah as of Genesis 12, or the end of Genesis 12, when they get kicked out. So Abraham is a half-truth teller, right? But in those two instances. So I'm not trying to throw shade on him completely, because he shuns the polytheism of his ancestors. He leaves these idols, believes that there's one God over everything, and God credits that as righteousness. And then God reveals himself to him. So he isn't without a little scandalous stuff. And of course, then he sleeps with Hagar because Sarah cannot get pregnant. So there's a lot of story. And you can go back and watch the Bible in a Minute Genesis series that I've done on those two chapters and get more. Let's look at Isaac. What's Isaac's scandal? Well, he does the same thing that dear old dad did in Genesis. What does it say? 26. Sorry. Genesis 26. Isaac does the same thing that his dad does. What's interesting is, chronologically speaking, Jacob and Esau have already been born. So Isaac and Rebekah are now in the area where Abimelech is, but it's most likely the son of Abimelech at this point, or maybe the son's son. We don't know. It's probably not the same Abimelech. It's just really a title that we can guess. And so Isaac goes in and he was like, hey, you're beautiful and they're going to kill me to get to you. Say you're my sister. That is even less true than it was with Abraham and Sarah. They're cousins. They're like second cousins. Rebecca is the daughter of Sarah's brother. Okay. So it's not true, right? Not at all. They were related, but they were not brother and sister. Well, then apparently they're in the land long enough that the wombs are shut up, and Isaac is seen caressing his wife, Rebecca, and Abimelech is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We don't do stuff like that with our sisters, bro. That's a little shady. And so then they come clean and they get kicked out of the land. How they would explain Jacob and Esau, I have no idea. Okay, so now we look at Jacob. What's the scandal with Jacob? Well, in Genesis 29 through 35, we see that Jacob has 4 wives. He has 2 actual wives, Leah and Rachel. They are sisters, okay? Ick factor is pretty high there. And then, but because they're struggling to have children, Leah is very fruitful, but then she stops having kids. Rachel doesn't have kids at all at the beginning. And so these sisters give their slaves to Jacob to sleep with as surrogates so that they can have children. Leah and Rachel can have children on their behalf. So Jacob doesn't protest at all, that we can tell. And so he ultimately has 4 wives, 4 women that he treats as wives. So there's a lot of sexual ethics going on here that would be very in today's standards. And yet God identifies himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These flawed men, these men who lied to save their own life because for those moments, they didn't trust that God would save them, right? God has promised that he was going to give them the land, that their ancestors would possess it. Well, if Abraham dies, then Isaac's not born. And so, but Abraham lied because he didn't trust God in that moment. He was afraid. Isaac lied because he was afraid. And Jacob has 4 wives and polygamous, and that's not what we do these days, and it's certainly so. Anyway, without getting too deep into that, just understand that when God says, I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he is saying, I am the God of men who are scandalous, and there will be more to follow in the next generations of men and women who are scandalous in their life. And yet God chooses this line of people to bring his Messiah through. The Messiah comes through Abraham's line, through Isaac's line, through Jacob's line, and through the lines of other people that are scandalous, and we're going to get to them. So, hope that was insightful for you. Like, subscribe, share, comment, and have a great day.